Welcome, everybody. This is a 20 scene interview time, first interview. This peanut butter over here, you know what I'm saying? It's your boy, good old fashioned peanut butter. Just out here, doing interviews on culture. The big culture here with 777. Like we got our boy Steve Daniels. Welcome. You know, like you're thank you for being here. This is really cool. And I just wanted to introduce my associate McIntyre on the he's going to be on speaker there. He's a member of the collective. Yeah. So, yeah, this is really exciting. I just wanted to lay the groundwork a little bit. 20 Scene is a zine collective. QKP is the zine collective. 20 Scene is a music editorial and evolving into more of a digest and stuff like that, and mostly about culture, but has its roots in punk rock, metal, and exposés on shows. Particularly, it was a volume of two-page spreads and stuff like that, and so we're excited that this is going to lead into Volume 5, Issue 1. So there's going to be a print version of this out eventually. Yeah, it's gonna be cool. It's gonna be cool, and we update, bi-weekly now on the website 20scene.com. So we do our self-publishing and distributions, hand-to-hand distributions of physical copies of our zines. Yeah, so basically, we're here to talk about 7-7 overcoming. 7-7-7 overcoming. The phenomenon that has just taken over the city. I swear, I remember there wasn't a week where I couldn't walk the streets of Toronto and see a 777 sticker, hear about some sick kid stuff going down with 777, which we'll get into later, just all sorts of cool stuff, Drake and selling the painting to him and stuff like that. That was big stuff, and we're gonna get into that. But first, I wanted to ask, my first question.
Sure.
What is 777 in one sentence?
So 777 overcoming. So by the way, hey everyone. I know we're live right now. We're really excited to be doing this first interview of the year with 777 OV and an expose on Steve Daniels. And so thank you for tuning in for everyone who's out there all around the world. I really appreciate your time and energy and focus to learn and find out how you can participate, support us, and be a part of this whole journey of 777. So 777 overcoming in a nutshell is essentially where art meets fashion meets function. So that's pretty much it. It's art meeting fashion, and we make that collide, and then we come up with products like this with bags, kippa hats, bum bags, skateboards, you name it. And so that's kind of what we do. It's where art meets fashion, and one of our bigger company goals is essentially to be able to inspire and drive passion through different projects we support, such as Skate for Sick Kids. We're doing Jump for Sick Kids this year, which is a skydiving initiative in support of the Sick Kids Hospital. But all in all, essentially, the projects that we support are all to do with children overcoming adversity through arts, film, and athletics.
Sweet. That is real admirable, dude. I I love that, all this work that you're doing, it really touches people, you've taken art from this stationary sort of thing, like a painting or a bag or something, and you've had it reach out to people and affect them. That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing about art. I mean, for me personally, because I grew up in the hospital, going and painting in the hospital, like little drawings, and I knew the world was so much bigger outside of the hospital. I had this feeling that the world is so much bigger, and I always through my ages of progression, because I started painting when I was like 2 or 3, like really serious. Like that's when I started really doing all my doodles and my drawings. And then by the time I was 7, that's when I remember telling myself that I want to start taking artwork seriously. And I got a model right here. Let me show it to you. Um, I started off by painting these little miniatures. They're called. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with this stuff. It's called
Oh yeah,
Warhammer.
Warhammer
Warhammer.
40K.
Gosh.
So
Yeah.
I started with Warhammer when I was like 7 years old. It's essentially like little models that I would learn how to paint, and I did that for about 7 years, like day in, day out. My mom would literally leave me at the store, like in Square One shopping mall, for like 5 hours, and like it would annoy the hell out of all the employees. But after she would come and pick me up and like buy me like a bunch of stuff, and like that's what would kind of keep me active because I always was doing stuff, whether I was getting suspended from school for running away, or whether I was pulling a fire alarm, or this is what got me focused. I was always about expression, right? So I really
Yeah.
like expressing myself, and I got into the models. And then when I stopped doing the models, well, I eventually got to the point where I just said, you know what, I really want to have my artwork be a part of the world, where it's not just a model that sits on a table. So it just developed from there, into painting in the streets. Then I got into doing all kinds of performances in nightclubs and New York City, and it just went on and on and on. And this has been many years in the making. So 777 is a whole life journey that has come to that point.
Yeah, definitely. Like I'm just impressed by the scope of all of this, like the sort of international aspect of it, like New York City, all the like, your return to Toronto, and the big things that you continue to do, that counter that you have of how many days you've been at this for and stuff like that's really cool.
Right, right, yeah. I mean, I believe today is day 1735 or something since I quit the film union, and I decided that I would follow 777, and I would make it my life mission to do my own thing, and to support others doing their thing. And there's only so much that I could support with my idea of selling art initially. That's why we eventually got into selling the bags, got into making different products. We're moving into furniture. We're moving into apparel. We got rings. We got a new line of rings that just recently came out with
Ooh,
Oh,
designer
that's cool.
Krukowski, and it's a collaboration with Steve Daniels and Leo Krukowski. And this is we have 8 left. I mean, they're all limited edition, handmade, and back to the sculptures. I started here when I was a little boy with the sculptures, and then now we got the bags and everything's in real life. So that
yeah.
took many years to manifest, but here we are.
Dude, your ability to take action and just make things happen is just mind-boggling. Like people seem to just flock to you. And like you really do remind me of Prince in a way, like he's such a one of your influences, I'm sure, but he had people flocking towards his personality too. It was just electric, and so like my next question for you is, what would you say or ask Prince if he was still alive?
Oh, man. If Prince was still alive, woo, what would I ask him? Geez, that's a really tough question.
It's a deep question.
Yeah, I mean, especially for the audience because they don't really know my affiliation with
Well,
Prince.
yeah, why don't you go into that, like for sure.
So long. I mean, it's a pretty long story, but long story short is that I'm born on the same day as Prince, June
No,
7th,
that's cool.
and I was inspired by the number 777 at some point in my life when I came back from New York, and I decided to make a collection of 7 paintings inspired by the life and legacy of Prince, as well as to make. And the year 2017 was coming up, and so there was going to be 7 paintings of Prince. We're born on the same day, June 7th, and 2017 was coming up. So I decided to call the project 777, and I decided to work on it. And my goal was essentially to make these paintings, and then to use the money sold. That I use the money which I earned from the paintings to start a children's initiative and to start my company, 777 Overcoming. And at that point, we were going to launch it on, I forget what day it was. It was like June, it was June 7th, 2017. And for some reason, we like, it was so many big things that I kind of wanted to put together. Like I wanted to launch my children's initiative, which is a real legal charity. I wanted to launch the company. I wanted to get the 7 paintings done. I wasn't able to do it all, and that was really hard on me because I push myself all the time, right? And I decided, you know what? Okay, I'm going to launch it next year. And I decided to launch 777 Overcoming on June 7th, 2018, on the birthday of Prince, where I was invited to Houston, Texas for the official national American celebration of Prince's birthday. They wanted me to come there with my paintings in my collection. And so I was getting ready to go do this whole expose of my artwork and my paintings on National Prince Day in Houston, Texas. And what happened was that I was to look exactly how many days has it been since Prince's death to the day that it was his birthday and the launch of 777 Overcoming in Texas on my birthday as well. He would have been turning 60, I would have been turning 30. And I looked at the numbers, and it was exactly 777 days since the day that he died.
Ooh, yo, that's serious.
That was crazy, like
Yeah, man. Holy shit.
so from the day that he died to the day that we launched the project on his birthday and my birthday, it was exactly 777 days to the day, and I didn't make that up. I didn't plan it. It was all that it just kind of all came to be. And now we have, now we're here. And back to that question, I think that's a really deep question, I think I would give it like a really broad question and ask him if I should get involved with politics.
Yeah. Oh man,
I don't know.
that would be cool.
I don't
Like,
know. I'm just kidding, but like I don't know. It's just because the further I go into the universe of 777, the further we collaborate with different people from different backgrounds, and we're working on a few big projects now. But some of the projects in the future have some political corporate interests, and I would just be wondering with Prince, what would Prince say about my participation with 777 with the corporate the corporations of America and Canada.
yeah, see me, I would just ask him why he chose purple as the color for the rain. Like that. But yours makes perfect sense because you guys undeniably have some sort of temporal connection. Like which is just really awesome. I love Prince too, so like that really drew me instantly to what you were doing.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, man. So, like, you've been at this sort of humanitarian work, like, but real sort of society building culture stuff. You know what I'm saying? And one of the things I wanted to get out there right now is for anybody who doesn't know too much about, like, what you do in the workshops, if you could give some information on how people can get involved and what it is that you do with those youth workshops.
Right. Okay. Well, in 2000, I began my projects working with you. I began my charitable projects, you could say, working with Unity Charity, which is hip hop, which is Canada's largest hip hop charity. They do a lot of different programs on essentially talking about like how people can overcome through the use of the 5 elements of hip hop. And one of my mentors, he was the facilitator at the Unity Hub in 2016, and I really wanted to start my own initiative. And so I decided to essentially start by doing classes and workshops for Unity Charity in the form of projects to do with filmmaking. So I was essentially teaching kids how to make filmmaking, and from there, I did that for about a year and a half. And at that point, we decided that we would start our own initiative called the Overcoming Arts Initiative for Children, which is helping children overcome adversity through arts, film, and athletics. And So when that was launched, we began doing projects locally here in Mississauga and the GTA, essentially doing programs on overcoming adversity through arts, film, athletics, and having different artists come in and do small workshops on those subjects. That kind of transition, because I do a lot of this on my own, and then I get other people to help me, and finances are a really big part of it. There's only so much that you can go, so much that you can grow, so many people that you can employ, have participate with so many funds, right? So we got it. We actually shifted over to starting to work with the hospital that saved my life, Sick Kids Hospital, and we started doing an event called Skate for Sick Kids. I being myself, I approached Trenton Stammel, the founder of Skate for Sick Kids. This was an event that was running for 6 years already, and they were doing essentially a 20-kilometer skateboard journey through the heart of Toronto, and they were raising about $2,000 a year for Sick Kids Hospital and giving back to their to different parts of the hospital. Essentially, I believe it was for patient care at the time. And Trenton Stammel, by the way, has an amazing story. He's my co-founder of the World Skateboarding Health Foundation. But long story short, we did Skate for Sick Kids. Well, 777 Overcoming presented Skate for Sick, the sixth annual one. And what happened was that we raised $25,000 that year for the whole project, meaning to facilitate the events, to do all the to get all the banners, to get all the flyers, to get all the awareness out there. And then we actually donated $10,000 to the hospital, and that was an incredible thing, because it went from an event that raised $2,000 a year to $10,000. So like seven definitely made a big impact, and we had I think close to 100 participants. It was an amazing time.
Man, dude, old peanut butter over here. I fucking love skateboarding. Like, I literally broke my ankle on video and posted it on Instagram. And like, I just wanted to ask you, did you enjoy skateboarding over the course of your adventures? Like, can you tell me, like, did you actually skate the streets of New York or something cool?
Yeah, big time. Well, look at this, man. This is speaking of skateboarding in New York City. This is an original skateboard that I used to ride around in New York City. This was actually some of Obey's
fucking rad.
stickers from Obey. This is that's an actual Obey sticker that I got, like one of my boys got from Shepherd Ferry. That's another one right there. And then the Love Child. This was actually signed by the Love Child. Love Child is really successful, one of the most successful modern artists right now. We grew up on the same street. He's selling paintings right now for like $50,000 at the World Trade Center.
Yeah, man.
So, I mean, like, I definitely grew up skateboarding since the age of 7 years old is when I started skateboarding, and it's something that always stuck with me. And I loved skateboarding my whole life. Skateboarding has been there since day one, and now we have our own company, 777, and we got our own skateboards. So like, it's come such a long way, and it's influenced so many people. We have actually, I don't know where that other skateboard is, but where is it? It's downstairs. We actually have a skateboard that was signed by. It's similar to this. It's downstairs. I'm not gonna go grab it right now, but it was signed by all of the participants who are going to be skateboarding for the Canadian Olympics.
Wow.
And it was supposed to be in 2020. It was supposed to be 2020. This year, we were supposed to be in Japan for the Olympics with the World Skateboarding Health Foundation. However, due to all the that didn't happen, we are aiming for 2022 to be in Japan with the World Skateboarding Health Foundation, as well as Skate for the Brain. That's Tyler Stemler, and as well as Trenton Stammel from the World Skateboarding Health Foundation. So we're planning on going there with our signed skateboards and, getting more signatures and kind of spreading awareness about, about 777, the Overcoming Arts Initiative for Children, as well as the World Skateboarding Health Foundation, and, some of the things that we do here in Canada, Toronto.
Sick, dude. Like, I just want to bring it back a little bit to 777 and your amazing 15-year retrospective at the Broken Cage Gallery.
Wow. I mean, that was one of the most incredible days of my entire life. Uh, the 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 um, the Broken Cage Gallery. I cannot say enough. It's literally the best gallery, like hands down. My opinion. Like, there's a lot of galleries in Toronto, but I'm gonna say this. Like Broken Cage Gallery, it really supports its people. There's a lot of other galleries that have international artists that have paintings selling for $100,000 that are like prints of Jean-Michel Basquiat, not even real originals. They're selling prints for $100,000 of artists that are long dead, and they don't even really support Toronto artists. Maybe they have one painting once in a while, but Broken Cage Gallery, back to the point, they have all Toronto artists. So they have the odd artists from maybe Vancouver, but it's all Canadian, mostly Toronto, and it's a three-floor gallery opened up in the heart of Toronto, located on Richmond Street, right near Bathurst and Richmond. And it's an incredible gallery that it changed my whole life. It gave me the biggest opportunity I could have ever asked for. I can actually tell you how that happened. It's
Yeah, go for it.
a story because okay. Cut back to I'm not sure. Are you guys familiar with Director X?
Not particularly.
Director X is the director for most of Drake's music videos.
Oh.
And Director X started an anti-violence, anti-gun initiative in Toronto, Canada, called Operation Prefrontal Cortex.
Okay.
And Prefrontal Cortex is essentially a program where instructors and meditators come in to go to work with local communities and schools, as well as the police department, and they teach them about how 10 minutes of meditation a day can change their lives and can mitigate actual gun violence by changing the patterns of the brain and not having the brain be so aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that's been going on for the last 2 years. And long story short, Operation Prefrontal Cortex, Director X, did his fundraiser at the Broken Cage Gallery in 2018, and I seen that they were doing a call for artists. So I decided that I would like to donate one of my paintings for this cause. Let me show you. I actually have right here. This is not the actual painting, but this is a similar to this is the original, and so I donated an original. A hand-embellished print.
That is beautiful.
By the way, this is the painting that I started the day that Prince died, and this is how 777 started.
Wow.
Any case, I donated the painting to the gallery, and that's kind of where my relationship kind of flourished to do this whole project. My best friend Drake. Anyways, but going back to the Broken Cage Gallery, so I met him through Operation Prefrontal Cortex through Director X, and I came there. We took some pictures with Director X. They raised some money for their initiative, Operation Prefrontal Cortex, and from there I spoke to. That was a very busy day, by the way, and so I couldn't speak to Eric that day. Eric McKinnon is the curator and the owner of the Broken Cage Gallery. And what he did was we spoke, and I learned that he was a sick kids hospital survivor as well, so we connected on that. Then I learned that he was a skateboarder as well, so we connected on that. And then it turned out that he lived in New York City as well. And he told me that he worked at the Guggenheim, the museum, the Guggenheim, and I was like, wait, you worked at the Guggenheim? And he said, yeah. By the way, Guggenheim is like the biggest museum in the world for contemporary art, and I said, well, one of my mentors worked at the Guggenheim, and he bought a painting off me for $28,000 back when I was in New York City. And he said, what's his name? And I said, Philip Munger. And he said, no way, Philip Munger was my boss in New York City at the Guggenheim. So all these three things, like he was essentially my mentor who bought my biggest painting ever to date was his boss.
Yeah.
He was a sick kids hospital survivor. And he was a skateboarder.
Wow. Well, that's like synchronicity, that,
It's the trifecta, I mean.
It is the trifecta. It's the seven, it's the seven, it's the seven. And
dude,
so we went from there. He gave me an opportunity, and we did a painting of 100 paintings of mine. 100 paintings of that kind of essentially tell the story of my life and everything that happened along my journey. There was 100 paintings, having all the Prince paintings, having my most recent paintings, And yeah, that was it was an incredible show. I mean, I can't express my thanks for the gallery, and this was during a pandemic too, so it opened up for a month, and then we were able to do the show, which we were planning for a year, and then as soon as the show ended, they went into lockdown number two. So whoever made it to the show, it was a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I thank everyone who came in advance. Um, but yeah, it was definitely one of the best shows. It was the best show I ever had in my entire life.
That's great to hear, man. Like, certainly deserve it, and that's why I want to bring it back a little bit and talk about those days where you were putting in the work. You know what I'm saying? And particularly, I wanted to talk a little bit about New York, your 5 year journey there, and particularly, your Rodney, the street preacher, and how he changed your life.
Speaking of Rodney, I actually brought this sticker over here. This says, "Where is Rodney?" You can't really say it's "Where is Rodney?" I posted these stickers all around New York when I came back to look for this man. I couldn't find him; he was homeless, so I decided to put up all these stickers to look for him. But that's kind of cutting ahead of the story.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
going back to I mean, you're asking me about what are you asking me specifically about Rodney
Well,
and about my experience in New York? Because depending on where the question starts, I can take you somewhere else.
let's start at the beginning of your journey in New York.
Okay.
So I believe you raised some money there for a film, like a substantial amount of money at one point, correct?
Yes, correct. Well, yeah, I mean, New York City is definitely the best place in the world to raise money, no matter what. If you're a go-getter, if you have a heart, if you have a soul, if you believe in yourself, New York is the place to go. I mean, you can say Ghana is the place to go. You can say Tanzania. You can say Paris. It depends on your heart and your spirit. I love New York City. I grew up going to New York City. My grandmother, first and foremost, she went to New York City on a boat during communism with money hidden in her underwear. You could only travel with $20 at the time. And actually, this gold ring right over here was purchased by my grandmother on her after 1 month of traveling by sea. They landed in, I believe it was Amsterdam or something like that, and she bought this ring over there. And then she got to New York. So my grandmother, shout outs to my grandmother, Grandma Steve, for making that journey of a lifetime to go to New York. During communism, during everything falling apart in Poland, and so my mom followed in her footsteps. Then I essentially followed in her footsteps, and I ended up being in New York. I mean, I grew up going to New York my whole life since I was a little kid. I spent all my summers there. I spent all my Easters there. I spent all my Christmases there. And you know, I spent a lot of my most biggest moments in my life as a child in New York City. So it really inspired me to think bigger and to see how big the world is. And when I was back in high school, I knew that the world was so much bigger, and I knew that if I just stayed, screwing around, using drugs, and hanging out with bad people, I would just die in the street, and I would never be able to get back to New York to follow my dream. So I quit all the drugs, essentially. I mean, that's a whole other story. But I quit all that. I decided to focus on my life, and I decided to go to New York City, and I got a scholarship for a film that I made called Steep Slopes, A Time and a Place, at this nightclub called Circa, and I was awarded with the Toronto Student Film Festival Top 25 Award. And shortly after that, I won another award for the Toronto Urban Film Festival Viewers' Choice Award, which played on all of the different screens all across CP24 on the hour for 24 hours every day for an entire month. So it screened to millions of people. And with that, I got a scholarship to New York Film Academy for about $70,000, I believe it was, so that I could essentially stay there for a few years. And in that time, I essentially raised, I believe I raised, it was upwards of $250,000. It must have been upwards of $250,000 for essentially three different projects that were surrounding stories of overcoming, and myself playing the characters.
That is cool. That is really cool.
So that
Like,
was that. But I mean, that was essentially the journey of going to New York, getting to New York. than being in New York and doing my schooling over there. It was, New York Film Academy. Uh, a lot of people, it's an expensive school, but nothing beats experience, And a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, I could learn filmmaking on my own. I could just go out there," and that is experience too, for sure, right? But when you're surrounded by individuals who've dedicated their time, their money, and their expertise and their energy to be in the greatest city in the world, you get something that you can't get anywhere else. You know?
Yeah. It definitely, it's spectacular that all of that led to the projects that you did with like the 777 overcoming film, and just everything that you've done, the caution culture stuff, like my best friend Drake, that all that, like it's really cool and like fucking awesome. But I wanted to see like more about Rodney the Prophet. Like that was a pivotal part.
Right. Well, speaking of Rodney, I actually got this is Rodney's. Okay, so who is Rodney? I'll tell you right now. Rodney is a man that I met. This is a bit of a longer story, so this is going to go on for about like. This is a story that usually takes me about like 20 minutes to tell. So I want you to kind of stop me at some points and then maybe ask me a question.
Sure, yeah, sure, yeah.
Something so I don't just ramble on for 20 minutes because it is a specific story that I need to tell specific points. So I can kind of give you specific parts in the story, and then you guys can cut in or ask me questions, and I can continue the story. But it is a long story because it leads to today. And that's been like now 7 years since I met Rodney, and I can't even believe it's been that long. So I met Rodney. I was doing push-ups at the corner of the street, at the corner of. Okay, by the way, I was already pretty much homeless at the time, living in New York City. I had no more money. I'd ran out of money. I'd ran out of everything, and I was essentially kicked out of I was actually even kicked out of these millionaires' house. I was living with these millionaires that were the owners. They were the owners of the largest family-owned business in Rhode Island. They owned a really big oil company, and they were essentially my sponsors. They were paying for my projects with Zombie Boy. They were essentially funding all my artistic projects. And it got to a point where we kind of were at each other's necks. They wanted more from me, and I didn't want to. We just weren't getting along. And they threw me out of the mansion. I went back to New York with 2 bags, and I was literally homeless. And I was sleeping in the streets of New York, sleeping on the subways, not for long, but a long time. And one day, as I didn't know where to go to New York. I lost all my friends. I lost all my friends from New York for the school. They all moved, and I didn't know anymore. I didn't know where to go any longer. And I remember, with being one of my ex-girlfriends, we went one time to this place called Soho, which I grew up going to with my mom because that's Soho, south of Houston. That's where all the fashion district is in New York. That's where all the celebrities live. That's where John Lennon would walk the streets. That's where Paul McCartney walks it up and down the streets with Rihanna and whatever. So just to set the stage, I went there and asked God to essentially introduce me to my new friends, to introduce me to my new best friends. And literally, like the next day, in that exact same spot where I asked God to introduce me to my new friends, this girl stopped me out of nowhere, and she says, "Hey, listen, I'm doing a story on like a fashion story." She was with a fashion magazine. She says, "Hey, I'm doing a fashion story. Hey, Ashley, I'm actually saying hi to some of my friends on live IG right now. Monty's here. Shout outs to Mr. Jefferson, YYZ, my girl. Hey, Reiki Lately." And I was actually speaking about Alexandra, one of my former girlfriends in New York City, who was one of my big inspirations and my muse at the time. And so anyways, I was walking through the street, and literally the same place where I asked to be, the same place where I was the day before, and
doing the push-ups and stuff.
To my new friend. Well, this is another spot. That's where I met Rodney. This is
Okay, I get, yeah.
I met Rodney. You see, because I was homeless too, and I'm in the street, and I'm walking past this exact spot where I asked God to introduce me to these new friends the next day. And this girl stops me. She says, "Hey, I'm doing a story for a magazine, and I would like to do a story on you. We're doing denim on denim." And that day, it just so happened that I wore everything denim. So she says, "You're the perfect part for the story. I would love to do a little story on you about, denim on denim." So I took pictures with her. We became friends, and and then shortly after, we we got together. I moved in with her, and one of the days that I was getting up to exercise at 5 a.m. and train, I was doing my push-ups, and I see this man from across on the other side of the street, and he kind of signals to me to like go to speak. Like I had a feeling that I should speak to him, and I didn't know what to ask him. I forgot what I asked him, but I asked him something, and he says, what are you doing here? Or we start talking, and I start asking him questions because I was more interested in him. And he starts telling me about how he's the eldest or the youngest son of 17 or 16, I believe, and how he was from Alabama, and how he was the descendant of slaves, and how his father was a preacher, or his father was a not a preacher, but he was a preacher. He worked at the church, like as a minister or something in
Okay.
Alabama, in Tallahassee, Alabama, I believe it was called. And his family grew up going to choir and going to church a lot. And so he told me he was a singer, how he sings in the street. And he started singing for me, and he had all these amazing songs. And I was totally impressed by it. And I was like thinking to myself, like, okay, I want to have this guy in my movie. I don't know what movie, I don't know what, but I want him in my film. So I decided to show him one of my clips of my film for Steep Slopes.
Okay.
That's the one that I got my award for in Canada,
Yeah.
and that's the same one for my scholarship for in New York from Jerry Sherlock. Jerry Sherlock, God rest his soul, from the New York Film Academy. So I showed him the clip, and after 15 seconds, he starts crying, he starts laughing, and he says, "Oh my God, oh my God." He's like, "We're gonna go to Obama. We're gonna go to the White House. We're gonna go to Oprah." And I'm just like, "What? Like, what do you mean? Like we're going to Oprah? We're going to Obama? We're going to the White House? That's crazy. Like you're drinking a beer at 5 a.m. in the morning, with a bag full of your belongings with holes in it. You got a big beard, and you're telling me we're going to Barack Obama, and we're going to the White House, and we're going to Oprah." I'm like, "Nah." I'm like, "This is too crazy." At that point, I decided, you know what? Let me see, like, how badly this guy believes in himself. So I said, "Okay, tomorrow, how about you meet me at 5 a.m. and you show me that you actually want to commit to this?" So he says to me, "Okay, I'll be there at 5 a.m. So he gave me his hand, he shook my hand, and he said, "All a man has is his word." And a tear went down his eye as he was shaking my hand. And he said, "I'll see you tomorrow." Let me tell you this. He was there every day for 45 days, 5 a.m. in the morning, waiting for me, training me, teaching me about the Bible, teaching me about Proverbs specifically, which were all about teachings about how to become a great man and how to be a man of your word. And
That's
he taught
awesome.
me all those things. He taught me all these different things from the Bible, which I never learned before. And essentially, the story goes on. Do you want to ask anything
Yeah,
about that?
yeah. Like, I really enjoyed that he became such an integral part of the 777 overcoming video. Like, what was the like process to some of those scenes, where he was speaking, where he was like, some of them he was covered in dust, some of them he was just in the street under a street light. Like, what was going through your mind as that was being created?
Right. So like, well, as this was being created, like literally, like I was essentially like telling him we're gonna make a movie. But at the time, like he's homeless, I'm practically homeless. I mean, I wasn't really homeless, but I was in my place, and you know, it was like it. He kept on telling me like the money's gonna come, the people are gonna come. Like he says, all the most powerful people in the world are gonna help us. He kept on telling us like how the most powerful people in the world are gonna help us, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is crazy. Like how are any of these people going to help us? Like, no one even knows about us. And like, anyways, the point of what I'm trying to get to is that like, I was gathering all these contacts of all these celebrities and all these people that I wanted to be in the film that were essentially like celebrities and fashion icons that were already world famous, but some of them that were actually living in Soho. And like we were,
Neat.
you know, if I met a famous dog, I would get the dog to be in the movie. And this is all like hypothetically speaking. Like we didn't have the money for the movie. We didn't have the location. We didn't have the actors. I just had this big idea to get like Rodney in this movie with my character Steep Slopes, which is like essentially like a alter ego version of myself,
Yeah.
and it's like a rapper version of myself because I always wanted to be a rapper. So that's coming, guys. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
like rapping, you know. But so where like the whole process was really like all over the place. I would wake up at 5 a.m. I would meet him. I'd film some scenes. He would teach me about the Bible and Proverbs specifically, rules about living your life, and you know, along the way, like, you know, it was essentially like 2 days before the show, and I essentially like I planned like I had all my equipment from the school that was given to me without insurance because I was used to get like millions of dollars worth of equipment from the school that we would get with trucks. Everything would be insured, signed out from the school. But after I finished school, I did no longer had that opportunity because there was no more insurance under my name for the school. So I went by myself to Jerry Sherlock, the owner of the New York Film Academy, and I asked him to lend us all this millions of dollars worth of equipment. All the staff, they said, no, 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 no. But Jerry Sherlock, God rest his soul, he told me he would give us the equipment. So
Wow.
we got all the equipment. The equipment's inside New York, inside this location where they were charging us like I think like $1,500 a day for the rental. And I told them like, yeah, I have all the money. Don't worry, the money's gonna come the next day. Don't worry, we're gonna get it. What up, guys? And the money's gonna come. Like, you know, I kept on pretty much telling everything that Rodney was telling me. Like Rodney kept on telling me the money's gonna come. So I kept on telling everyone the money's gonna come. You know,
Yeah, man.
I essentially amassed this like huge debt that was essentially like I think it was like already like it was already like $10,000 that I thought I was missing, and I kept on believing that I was gonna get it somehow because I had one investor that was gonna essentially meet us, and like I'm gonna cut like to like way ahead so I don't like we could talk about other
Well,
stuff.
yeah, no, I actually wanted to ask you about the eventual, and I think this is what you're leading to, the sale of one of your paintings for $8,000 to Philip Munger. Could you like tell us a little bit about Philip Munger, who he is, and yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I'm getting to. So like I said, I was deficit what I believe to be $8,000 to shoot this musical, which was about the story of this bipolar artist procreating with an alien god. And we had like 20 different actors, celebrities. Stevie Boy was a part of it. That's like an international designer for Lady Gaga, Madonna. We had Madonna's choreographers from the Super Bowl, Javier Ninja, Benny Ninja. We had like we had a former Mr. Africa in it. We had we had like a famous dog from Soho in it. Like we had there were like the list goes on and on. Like Zombie Boy was in it. Zombie Boy was also a big part of Lady Gaga's project, Born This Way. He was a part of it. So we had all these amazing talents, celebrities, actors, models, designers, a part of this musical that I was going to film that I was deficit $10,000 for. So Rodney keeps on telling me, he's like, don't worry, the money's coming. The money's all coming to you. You're going to get all the money, right? He has that deep Alabama Southern voice, right? And he keeps on telling me all this stuff. And I'm literally in the subway and it's like 4 a.m. We're coming back from a nightclub and we meet this black chick and we're just sharing. We're just talking because New York is like, even if they're wearing masks in New York City, they're still talking. I'll tell you that, not like Toronto, but like, everyone's talking. It's 4 a.m. and I meet this chick, right? And I'm just telling her my story, and she's like, "Listen." She hears that like I'm trying to find out. At that point I was trying to get my money from the CEO of Starbucks, his best friend called Marcus Atwaby. So Marcus Schultz is the CEO of Starbucks, or was, and then Marcus Atwaby was his friend, and this chick was an employee of Marcus Atwaby who owned a juice press, which is a juicing company. I love juice, and shout outs to the juice press. best fucking juice in New York City, hands down. Any case, I was trying to find this guy. She told me he's going to be at the corner of this and this street at this time. So I went there with my whole package. Long story short, the guy doesn't show up. So I'm all distraught because I'm 36 hours away from the shoot. I'm going to need like $10,000. It's not going to be there. And now I don't know where this millionaire is. And I'm sitting on the corner of the street and I got my head on I got like one more pitch meeting happening with this other lady who wrote for the Times Magazine. Anyways, I was going to have a meeting with her and her husband who was coming back from a real estate trip. He was a real estate developer. Yeah. And she told me that he was in potentially giving us the money, but it wasn't sure. So I was about to meet her, but I already couldn't find the CEO of Starbucks' friend Marcus Atwoodby. So I'm here in the middle now where the money was, I'm not getting the money there, and I don't know if I'm getting that money.
Yeah.
So here I am on the street. I got my mohawk on, I'm covered in paint. I'm topless. I got my skateboard with me. I'm on my laptop, which looks like I stole the laptop from upstairs because I was in front of like a really ritzy neighborhood.
Yeah.
Anyways, what happens is I see this man walking from far away, and his shirt says, "Got rights." And I think to myself, got rights. Like, you know that got milk thing, right?
Yeah.
Got milk, right? So as he walks closer, something in my head says, "Speak to this man," you know. And I always feel like that's like my father, you know, telling me, you know, go, like, you know, like sometimes because my father died when I was 21.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that.
Week of New York. But anyways, I had this voice that was kind of like a quiet voice inside me that said, was like kind of like my father's intuition, which said, "Talk to this man."
That's
so
amazing.
when he walked by, I said, "No, do you?" And he says, "Do you what? Like, what do you mean, no, do you?" And I'm like, "You're sure? It says got rights." So I said, "No, do you? Do you got rights?" And he says, "Well, a little bit more than most." And I said, "What are you, a fucking diplomat?" Because I wasn't having it. I didn't have time for, you know, I didn't have time. I had to raise $10,000. I had 36 hours, and I had, like, you know, it's $8,000 actually. So the number was 8,000. So I had to raise $8,000 in 36 hours, and I don't have time for random conversations, you know. But something compelled me to speak to this man. So we start talking. He says, you know, I say, "No, do you?" And he says, I say, got rights. And he says, "Well, a bit more than most." And you know, and then he says, "Well, you know," so I said a bit. Well, so I said, "No, do you?" So wait, let me get this straight for a second. 1 second. He said, "No." I said, "No, do you?" And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Got rights." And he said, "Well, a bit more than most." And I said, "What are you, a diplomat?" And then he says, "Well, my family came here in 1614, and I believe it was 1636. They came here in 1636." And I said, on the Mayflower or the Mayflower, I believe it was
Mayflower,
called.
yeah.
He said, "Yeah, Mayflower." And he says, No. They were peasants. They came in peasant ships." And I'm like, oh. And he says, "Yeah, they came in peasant ships." And like, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said that he's a diplomat, essentially. Like he said he's something like a diplomat.
Yeah.
And so he says, "Oh yeah, I'm so he tells me all that stuff, and he says, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to raise $8,000 in the next 36 hours for a musical." You know, he said, "What for?" He said, "That's a lot of money." He's like, "What are you trying to raise it for?"
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "No, it's for a musical about a bipolar artist who procreates with an alien god." And he says, "Wow, that's really interesting." And he's like, "Can you show me anything about it?" He's like, "I've made a musical before." So I had that write-up, which was done by the lady I was supposed to meet in a bit that worked for Times Magazine.
Yeah.
And she was gonna, so yeah, he asked me what was the musical about. I told him it's about a bipolar artist who procreates with an alien god. And essentially, he said to me, "That's really interesting. Do you have something you could show me?" So I give him the write-up that was done by the lady who was working with the Times Magazine, the New York Times.
Yeah.
Because her husband was potentially going to invest. So she wrote up a really nice description so that her husband could read it, but also so others could read it. So it was perfect timing. I flip it around, show it to him. He says, "Wow, there's a lot of big names in here." It says Lady Gaga. It says Madonna. It says, you know, I mean, these are all by affiliation through the models and the designers that were a part of the project, being Zombie Boy, Stevie Boy, and all the other, you know, the choreographers. And he says to me, "It says over here that you're a painter." can you show me some of your paintings? So I say, sure. I show him some of my paintings on the computer, and he says, wow, this is better than like half the paintings that I go to auction to see. Like, he said, and for me, I didn't believe him. This guy was dressed worse than I was. Okay, he was literally dressed like, like in this got right shirt, waiting from his like underneath his arms. It was like pure sweat, and he had a big beard, but he had these really cool spectacles, and the spectacles looked like they were interesting because they just held onto his like head or something. There wasn't any like arms
Clips for the
or
ears.
anyway,
Yeah.
he tells me, he says, this is better than half the auctions I go to. And he says, listen, Daniel, I'm on the way to go have a meeting with the board of directors at the Guggenheim Museum. At that moment, I'm looking at him like, I don't believe you.
That's full circle right there.
Yeah,
And he
that's
says, I'm going to have a meeting with the board of directors at the Guggenheim. I really would like to come meet you to do this, to come see your work. But I have to go have the meeting with the Guggenheim first. And I said, no. I said, I have no time for the Guggenheim. If you want to cancel your meeting with the Guggenheim, because I have my meeting with Madonna's choreographers, then you cancel your meeting with the Guggenheim and you come meet me at the corner of Prince Street and Broadway in 15 minutes. And he says to me, okay, well, I don't know if I could do it. I got to cancel my meeting with the Guggenheim. And like, I thought this guy was bullshitting me, to be honest, right? Because like, a lot of people in New York, they blow smoke up your ass, you know? I mean, as they do in Toronto, as they do everywhere. But he said, I'm going to try to cancel my meeting. So I rush over to have the meeting with the choreographers for Madonna, which was Akiko Tokuoka from Japan, and Javier Ninja and Benny Ninja, who were the actual choreographers for the Super Bowl that year.
Wow.
And so like you couldn't be late to that meeting. And this guy, I didn't believe him, right? So I shoot to my meeting with the choreographers for the Super Bowl, Madonna, whatever. And right at that, like I have my 15-minute meeting because I'm zooming all around town at this point. I'm crazy. I'm running all around town, and I get to the corner of Prince and Broadway, and Philip is there. He's sweating like a pig. All right. Okay. So anyways, some people are requesting me to be a part of the video, but I can't. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. But I can't involve you right now just because we're doing this thing on a live podcast and it'll change things up. But anyways, so I meet with Philip. We're walking down the street, and mind you, the exact same place he met me was the exact same place where I asked God to give me my new friends. Literally the same spot where he happened to meet me. That was where everyone was hanging out at the time. It was Prince and West Broadway. So I meet
that's
him,
unbelievable.
walk down the street, and we sit down, and he says, Daniel, listen, we have, quiet, everything quiet now. And he says, Daniel, he says, what compelled you to speak to me? And I said, when my father died, I had this voice that started coming up, which was kind of like an intuition of my father. And I told him that voice is what told me to speak to you. And then he said, Daniel, you're not going to believe it. When my mother died, the exact same thing started happening to me.
Wow. Yeah, that's deep, man.
So the whole world stopped at that moment. The whole world stopped, and it was just me and him in the universe. It was just me and him connecting with the spirits outside of us, something like this, right? And so he says, okay, let's go see these paintings. We go see the paintings upstairs. We walk up, by the way, like 150 stairs because we lived on the 7th floor of this building. I believe it was the 6th, but let me say it's the 7th, whatever. But it was 150 steel stairs, okay? It's like an old-ass building on Thompson Street, right at the corner of Thompson and on Prince. And so anyways, we walk up the stairs. My girlfriend at the time, Alexandra Alexis, who was an international pop star, had a show on MTV. We had no money. We were broke. And we didn't literally have $1 to buy her a Tylenol so she can get over her period because she was having really bad cramps. And so the first thing, like, she was on the bed and she was making all of her calls. Like, she was essentially she was the person who made this whole project possible. At the end of the day, like, if it wasn't for Alexandra Alexis, like, this would have never occurred. And, like, I put her through the ringer, like, I have, like, a lot of feelings coming up right now, just, like, remembering at what point of her life she was in and how she was helping me because she believed in me.
Yeah.
And there she is on the bed, surrounded by all these production notes, all this steep shit everywhere. It was all about steep, you know. And she was there, like calling all the producers, all the people, making everything happen. And Philip asked us, like, is there anything they could get for you guys? And then I told them, please if you can get a Tylenol for Alexandra. So he ran downstairs, the 150 stairs, went back up another 150 stairs, sweating now, right?
Yeah.
This is the guy who just supposedly quit his meeting with the Guggenheim, right? So he's sweating, and you know he bought me a pack of smokes too. I was smoking cigarettes at the time. He gave me my pack of smokes. He gave her Tylenol, and you know he starts asking like, okay, like tell me about these paintings, right? So I'm showing him the painting, showing him this painting, showing him that painting. He says, no, I don't really like these. I like it. I'll think about them, but show me the one over there that's in the corner. And it was a large one that was all in the corner. And it was this painting. It was all wrapped up. And then, so it was huge. I couldn't, like literally the week before that, I made that for a commercial that was in Finland through Alexandra Alexis for like a shoe company she was working for. And I made this large painting that was about the universe and about how everything works together. And it was called Love Universe.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool. That's.
And so, yeah. So I'm gonna. This story is almost done. So I show him the painting, and he says, "I love this painting. Where can I see a picture of it? Like, because I told him the story about it, but I couldn't unwrap it because it was so big, and there was no room to unwrap it because it was literally the size of a school bus. This painting, okay. So, long story short, long. He says to me, I'm going to call you back in 1 hour. I'll tell you what I think. Okay. So he calls me back. I think it was like half an hour. And I'm going crazy. I don't even believe in this guy. Okay. First and foremost. Right. So he leaves. He calls me back on the phone and he says to me, Daniel, I decided, he's like, what's your contingency for the project? And I said, I don't have a contingency. I just know that it's going to be about 8,000. Like, you know, I told you I'm looking for 8,000. Like, I gave a budget. I think the budget said $6,000. And then he said to me, okay, well, I'll give you $8,000 for that painting. At that point, I'm like, no, I don't. Like, in my head, I'm like, this guy's lying. This is all bullshit. I don't believe it. And I didn't believe it, right? So he says, I'm going to come and I'm going to give you the money tomorrow. And I said to him pretty much like, if this is something that you're lying about, and if you're just like screwing with someone's like emotions and their timeline for this project, it'll be the worst thing you'll ever do in human history to me. And at that moment I said, if you're serious about this, you'll call me tomorrow. And I hanged up the phone on him.
Wow, that must have been so intense. And so you from there you received the funding for the movie and
No. That doesn't, like, I just hanged up the phone.
oh, okay, so he like what happened from there?
What happened from there? Well, this is where the story gets even greater. So I run outside. I go meet Rodney. Just happens to be right in front of my house, and he says, "It's all coming together, my son. I tell you, it's all coming together." And I'm like, "Yo, man, shut up. I'm right now. I need $10,000. Don't tell me the money's coming. I need $10,000, man." So he's like, I'm like, "Yo, just be at 5 a.m. tomorrow where we meet every day, okay?" So, anyways, cut to the next day. The next day in the morning, we're meeting and we have no van to move any of the equipment, and we have to move this huge armoire, like this huge like prop that was in the musical, through the city of New York. We have to move it on a little doorway dolly, like about like 80 streets at 5 a.m. So as we're walking through the streets at 5, like it's about like 6 a.m. We're passing on like 45th Street because we have to walk all the way from Broadway and like way before First Street, all the way to 49th Street. So we had to walk like almost 70 streets, all right?
Wow.
And we're doing this on a little doorway dolly, and it's shaking and it's like rattling, and we're on the road and the cars are honking at us. It's rush hour. But we couldn't be on the sidewalk because the sidewalk was more fucked up than the actual ground that the
Yeah.
cars ride on. So we're on the actual road. We're on Broadway. Me and this homeless man, he can't even walk, so he's limping. He's limping. He's like, and he's telling me, he's like, Daniel, my son, I had a dream last night. A man came and he gave us all of the money for the whole project. And I'm like, you know what? At that moment, I was like, wait, that's pretty interesting, because a man came to me yesterday, offered us all the money, and then now the prophet, the guy who I've been calling the prophet the whole time, just so happens to have a dream with a man giving us all the money. And I'm like, is this guy really a prophet? Like, is he really connected? I'm like, what's happening here? You know? Oh man, this is not recording. I hope your screen is. I hope your thing is recording.
Yeah. We got it going.
Okay, so anyways, so he tells me, I had this little GoPro recording over here. Give me a second, guys.
Yeah, take your time.
Yeah, take your time.
Give me a second.
We can do a 5-minute break if you need to get yourself a drink or anything.
We're all checking in the story, but okay. So back to where it's at. So he tells me that he had this dream, right? And I'm like, this is the moment where I could have either told him that I met this man who said he's gonna give us all the money, or I could keep my mouth shut. And because if it doesn't happen and he had that dream, and then I told him that a man came and gave us the money, and he had a dream that a man came and gave us all the money, but it didn't happen in reality, then he would think he's a false prophet for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm not going to tell him that I met this man.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we moved this whole prop to the house, to the location at 49th and Broadway, right? Big studio where Jay-Z just shot his whole project. And they welcomed us and everything, and we're bringing the stuff, and remember, that guy who has the studio, he's expecting like $4,000 in like 40 hours from us, and he has all of our equipment inside of this place. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So, worst case scenario, he could even steal some of the equipment, that I got on loan from Jerry Sherlock. God bless his soul.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just crazy, all the things that we're aligning. And so we get there, and we deliver the thing. Then I go back to the house to go have my meeting with the investors from the lady who wrote the article for Times Magazine. She didn't write the article for Times. She just worked with Times. And she made an article for me about my musical. And I was about to go meet her and her husband, who were interested in funding the musical. But first, I had to get her husband to like me, agree with the project, and so on. So we bring all my paintings down the stairs, down the 150 stairs. We're bringing them, and they were huge paintings. It was not easy. It was back-breaking work. And so we get it into this corner. We get it into the basketball court where we were going to host our meeting. The basketball court, by the way, was at the corner of Spring and Prince. It's a famous basketball court that's in all the biggest movies in New York movies ever. Anyways, we're inside of the place. I have the meeting with this husband. He's like a really macho guy, and he was totally different than her. And he had all these tattoos, and he was like really well built. And he's like, so tell me about your project, man. And immediately he didn't like me.
Yeah.
Then I moved to Rodney, and then he's like, homeless black man, crazy white artist. I'm getting out of here.
Oh.
He cut the meeting short. He left, and I knew that was I'm not getting the money from these people, and they were my only lifeline. But I had Philip Munger. I didn't know who Philip Munger was, but so at that moment, I get a call from Philip Munger, and he's like, yo, come meet me at the Bank of America, and I will give you all the money. So I tell, and then side note, by the way, when my father died, the voice that went in my head from my father said, go to Bank of America at Union Square, and you're going to meet the people over there that are going to introduce you to the bigger world that'll help you become the big, great artist of the world. That's what the voice literally said of my father's spirit. That's what I felt.
And was that the first conversation with Philip Munger that you ever had? Was that phone call after the lady who wrote the article and her husband left?
Yeah,
That,
that was after I hanged up the phone on him. That's when because he told me the last conversation I had with Philip Munger was he said he's gonna give me $8,000 for the painting. But I didn't
okay.
believe him, and I hanged up the phone on him, and I said, if you're real about this, you'll call me tomorrow. So he just so happens to call me right after I get denied by the people who were going to potentially invest.
Yeah, that is just a story of faith. Holy man, like I some of the stuff is just wow. Like and bringing it back to like the sort of conscience of your father that you were connecting with and stuff like that. All of this is just so moving, dude. And like, and so the money came through that
Well, no,
day
I
at a
went.
Bank of America.
Well, yeah, I went back to the Bank of America. I meet Philip, and here's $8,000. He's like, don't worry about like the painting. Give me the painting later. He says, I have to go to Martha's Vineyard tonight. I don't know what Martha's Vineyard was, but that's the place where all the biggest, richest people in the world go to have their houses, right?
Mm.
And so he says he has to go to Martha's Vineyard. I'm like, yeah. Come to the shoot. Come to the shoot. So he says, I'll see if I can cancel my Martha's Vineyard trip with my family. And I'm like, yeah, cancel it. Come to the shoot.
Mm.
So, anyways, I go back to the Prophet, and I take the money. It was like all $100 bills, and I'm not kidding you. I literally poured all the money in the basketball court in front of my friends on this homeless man, and he started crying, and he's like, "I told you, my son. I told you. I told you,
Wow.
my son." And like everyone's like my girlfriend at the time, she's crying like another like one of my other friends from Idol magazine, like executive director of Idol magazine, he's like, oh my god, no, it didn't happen. And oh my god, why does this
Dude.
thing stop recording every second, man? You're recording anyways, full
Yeah.
screen, right?
Yeah, we got it. It's just the screen for the
Recording full screen 1080p.
yeah,
Oh,
1080p.
okay, good stuff. All right, good stuff over there. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, I got all the money. The next day, Philip came to the shoot. He says, first thing he says is literally this. He's like, "You're gonna need more money." So the next day, he gives us another $8,000. So at this point, we're swimming in money. All right. We had like, like $16,000 where I only need 8,000. Then we have like double what I thought we needed, and like we're spending money like crazy, like $100 tips to people. Like it's whatever, because I wasn't being mindful of how I was spending the money, because it was all kind of like given from God, and I
Yeah.
wanted to essentially bless other people how I was blessed.
That is really like just mind-boggling that especially when you take into consideration the connection between Philip Munger and his financing of the Obama campaign and stuff like that. Uh,
Well, and I didn't
like
even know about that. And it
yeah,
wasn't like me and Philip Munger. We continued to hang out. Like he would come to our parties. Like when I came, like I went to like right after the shoot, like right immediately after the shoot, like the next day, I left to like I went on on an international trip. I went to Cyprus. I went to Finland. I went to Poland, and I went back to Canada. Then I went back to New York, and for my coming back home party, Alexandra, she threw a huge party for me with like tons of people that I knew and I didn't know, and she had like DJs there, and like I
wow.
was partying. Like I got to the party, and literally Philip Munger, she invited Philip Munger to the party, and Philip Munger was at the party, and we continued to like hang out, and at times it was like literally me, this homeless man, the Prophet, aka Rodney Clifton Mac Clark Jr. the third. It was me, him, Philip Munger, an American billionaire who I didn't know was an American billionaire yet, and we're partying and having good old times.
This is just
And
more to how you bring people together. Like, don't you see? Like, you have this magnetic ability. You can bring you put a like a millionaire investors and a street prophet, homeless person, and yourself, like a kid from Toronto with your the things that you even went through as a young kid, with your sickness and stuff like that. Like, and that's really amazing, dude. And that's why I wanted to ask you as well a little bit, like
I
just
wanted
about
to,
your Africa Clean Water Initiative. I know you
yeah,
you you
I want to
sold a
get that, but I
painting
want to get
there.
one last thing. I'll tell you about the Clean Water Africa Initiative. I want to tell you this last part. This is the cherry on top of the whole story. I'm gonna finish it right now.
Go for it. Go for it.
So I didn't know who Philip was at the time. He kept, he told me he was this diplomat. He told me he worked at the Guggenheim, but I never talked about that. Me and him were always just kind of buddy buddy, you know. And like he'd be singing in the streets, like you know, it'd be crazy stuff. And like so, anyways, um, he gave me like so like he gave me like another $8,000. So at this point, he gave me like $28,000 or like $26,000 cash. And I didn't know who he was. It was like a year later or like a few months later. And I was doing some research on Philip Munger to find out who he was. And then I found the link, and the link said primary investor of Barack Obama. Number one, Philip Munger. And again, it went back to like, what did the prophet told me? What did the prophet say when I met him in the street? What did you remember? What he told me?
That it would go all the way to Obama
That we would go all the way
to
to Obama.
Oprah. Yeah,
Right.
man.
And who gave me all the money? Obama's primary financier. So the homeless man, when I met him, said, "We're gonna go to Obama." Then 45, like you know, like a few months later, the guy who gave me all the money for this project turned out he was Barack Obama's primary investor.
Yeah,
So
like
that goes a lot to show you that you know what, you can't. You have to listen to everyone. Everyone has an important part in this world, you know. And the homeless person can, you know, is as important as the fucking billionaire. You know, without the homeless person, I would have never met the billionaire. Without the
exactly.
billionaire, I would have never launched the project. Without, you know, it just bum, 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 bum. But so I mean, that was the longest story. It's a very long story, I know.
It's a wonderful story. Don't even like it's amazing. I love that I got the chance to just hear it from your own perspective. And yeah, dude. So tell me about the painting you sold for the Clearwater Initiative. Is that not the most expensive painting you've ever sold for the Clean Water
No,
Initiative, the Africa Clean Water Initiative?
no. The most expensive painting I ever sold was for the full was it was $8,000 initially, which I got for the painting, but then
Yeah.
I ended up getting $28,000, and all he got in return was the painting, and I used all that money for the movie essentially. So I
Yeah.
got like you can say I got $28,000 from an American billionaire who was the board of directors at the Guggenheim to make my movie for my painting, and then since then I've sold a few other paintings for like 5,000, 7,000
I
in
I,
Canada.
I
But
thought.
the painting for the Clean Water Initiative, that's another story. That was Face Africa. So Face Africa and I, we collaborated on a project. And Face Africa, by the way, is Liberia. It's Liberia's largest clean water initiative, and it goes by the name of Face Africa, which does a lot of clean water initiatives for many countries in Africa.
Okay.
But I always wanted my company 777 to save lives. I always wanted it not just to be inspiring people, but actually I would like to one day say that, like, you know, 777 actually saved lives. So I thought, all right, if we get involved with water projects and we can actually, like, you know, provide people with water from dying, then I thought that I would have fulfilled my life's mission. So I reached out to Face Africa. They really liked my idea. I said I wanted to collaborate with them. I would like to come into New York. I would like to come to New York from Canada to bring this painting and essentially donate it to help you guys build these water wells in Liberia. And so I went there all the way to New York. I had, you know, the president of the Raptors, Ujiri Masai Ujiri. He was there. Beyonce's stylists were there. You know, the CEO of you know, it was all the biggest famous people from the Black African diaspora, like, you know.
Wow.
And we raised that night. We raised about $250,000, I believe. And my painting was sold to a big CEO, a really awesome guy named Edmund Von Diddles. His name is not Von Diddles. That's just his Instagram tag. He does a bunch of digital stuff. He essentially invented he invented a system in Africa where you can pay with your cell phone.
Ah. And
Yeah.
he bought your painting.
He bought
That.
my painting. Yeah, he bought my painting for a couple grand, and that, you know, so essentially I get to say now that 777 actually financed the building of our first water well in Liberia with Face Africa in 2018.